Hello there. This is Pauline Crawford, and I am CEO of Corporate Art International, and I'm known as the Ambassador of Magical Conversations, and I am delighted today to be interviewing David Marquet, who says he's a former control freak, but also the commander of a nuclear submarine. Is that right, David? And David, you're on the East Coast of America, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Thanks for having me on your show.
That's good. So I'm a British international consultant, but I live in Las Vegas, and I am very passionate about understanding how men see the world today in terms of how they command and control, maybe, or how they interact with their emotions. And David, you have a remarkable view on that in your story about maybe shifting from what you said was a command freak to being what? How would you describe yourself now?
Well, I would say that our experiment on the submarine, we went from being take control, attract followers. That was the goal of leadership. There's a couple ways you can frame it up. Take control, attract followers, or do you give control and create leaders?
Yeah.
And I think I tried to be as much as possible a give control, create leaders type of leader. Now the problem is you need both in a sense. You need sort of this active, gritty, get it done, follow the enemy to the end of the earth activity happening. But at the same time, it's got to be balanced with, well, hey, what do you guys think? How do you see it? How do you see it? How might you see it differently than me? Because that's going to give us more resilient decision making. And the key is it's going to activate everybody's thinking. Well, more than that, it'll activate their ability to express what they're thinking. They're already thinking stuff. This is the irony. CEOs going to be, oh, my people aren't thinking. They have no ideas. Like, yeah, they do. They're just keeping them inside. Why? Because they're shy? No, it's because of the way you're interacting with them. No, it couldn't be me.
Yes, and this was in an all-male environment. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. It was on the submarine I commanded had all men. We have women on submarines, some submarines, but my submarine only had men.
And what made the shift for you to understand that you could shift from being the control freak, the control and command, to actually allowing people to think and presumably use their emotions?
Panic and fear. For me, what happened was I was always one of the smartest guys in the room, and I was trained to be the captain of one particular ship. I would have known all the answers. I call it knowing, telling leadership. The leader knows all the answers, tells all the instructions. And I was shipped at the last minute to a submarine that was different than the one I was trained up for. And now I was not knowing, but I still had a habit of telling. Very quickly, it fell apart. I had 2 weeks to get ready. I gave an order, didn't work. The officer parroted it anyway.
Yeah.
Even though he knew, and then it all came out. And I said, "Why did you repeat it? You knew you couldn't do it on this." It was a very simple thing. It was like shifting into second gear, and there was only one gear, so it wasn't a big deal. But what was a big deal was it exposed this cultural behavior of doing what you were told was the predominant thing. And we all say the same thing: speak up, say your mind, it's safe, you can do it. But the behavior on a day-to-day basis doesn't reinforce that. And so what I realized that my people weren't speaking up. I thought, well, I have to keep telling them what to do because they're not speaking up. And if I lean back, they won't create the motive energy to make the organization run forward. I need to put the energy in. But that's backwards thinking. They're not leaning forward and putting the energy because I keep telling them what to do. So step one is I have to lean back, which means I have to keep my mouth shut and deal with the awkwardness of these silent moments where I would say, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
And it would feel like forever, but it would really only be 10 seconds. And then they go, well, this is, I would ask them, like, what would you do if I weren't here? And if you had to make this decision right now,
Yeah.
who would you talk to? Not me. And I kind of had these little tricks to get them to tell me what they would, what do they see? It always starts with description. Just tell me how you see it. That's because it feels safe. And then I would go to, now, what do you think's going on? Now, what would you like to do? What do you intend to do? And so I'd ramp them some basically this backward looking description, how did we get here, to forward looking, what should we do? And it moves them from safe to less safe, but less ownership to more ownership and responsibility. So that was sort of what we worked on. And it was amazing, it was magical, because now all these people are coming to me and they're pushing energy into me.
Yeah.
As opposed to me trying to make it happen all the time.
That is so encouraging because, as you know, I study how men and women are working together. And in studying the corporate world, which is always different to a submarine, but maybe not. If it's all male, it may be very similar. Because I do think in the corporate America that is all male, and it let's not get to the gender of it, but that people are waiting for the boss to say what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And they're afraid, which is what I'm hearing you say, is by leaning back, you encourage the men to actually take some responsibility and some thinking about what they needed to do. So as you observed that happening, what happened for you? Did you find that you were feeling more emotional about the whole situation? Did emotions come up in the conversation?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, trust your gut can be really bad advice. Like, trust your gut is, I think we might be going into a bad place. That's a good place to trust your gut. But your gut's also going to tell you that you want to be the person in charge. You want to reduce uncertainty, and the best way to do is just tell people what to do. So this is a bad place to trust your gut. My problem was every time I leaned back, I felt I would do this with my mouth, because I felt like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, and how long am I going to have to wait for something to happen? And it was very frustrating and tense for me. I had to learn a language which was vulnerable, ambiguous, and uncertain. So as opposed to saying, go here, the enemy's there, we're going to go there, and this is what's going to happen. Because you don't know that. You can say, well, this is 90% what I think is going to happen. But oh, by the way, that means there's a 10% chance it's not going to happen. There's a 70, so instead of saying there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, we would say there's 60% chance there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which means there's a 40% chance that they're not. Now let's have a conversation. Oh, well, that's way too complex. I have to think hard about that. I don't want to do that. Okay, well, yeah, but that's your job. That's what you signed up for, not to simplify complex realities to such a simplistic way that you gloss over all these different potential outcomes. So over and over and over again, I would get frustrated with people collapsing nuanced perspectives into black and white. Well, 40% of 65% of the admirals think we should invade Iraq. Yeah, but 35% think we shouldn't. Let's hear from those people, right? No. Anyway, I don't want to go back into that whole story.
No, but it's also, it's about listening. So in my study of men and women, and I'd like to bring that in, is that my experience is that women are more likely to talk about things. They may or may not listen to each other, but they are more circular in the way they tackle life and business. And men are, in all my interviews with men, they're very straight line thinkers. Let's get the task done, be a doer. And yet there is a movement of change that I'm coming across in both men and women, that we want to have a more together, leaning in, out, whatever it is, but being able to contribute is one of the main keys. And reading in your forthcoming book, which is coming out soon, isn't it? Leadership is Language.
Yeah.
I think that what I'm hearing in your work is that allow for people to come in and contribute. So by leaning back and having that awkward space,
Yeah.
people are coming forward. Now, whether that's male or female, but it's a feminine energy force in a sense of feminine and masculine energy in all of us. And that's what I've been studying. Does that resonate with you?
I'm a man, so I don't know whether it's masculine or feminine. I can just tell you what makes sense to me in the world today. And there's two things, but that totally connect with what you're saying. Number one is the phrase I use is you have to let the doers be the deciders. And the reason I phrase it that way is because in the industrial age, we had thinkers. We divided the world into two, thinkers and doers. These were college educated management, typically not college educated workers. We called these leaders, we called these followers. We paid these people salary, we paid these people hourly. We wore different uniforms. They were suits, they were blue jeans, they were lab coats, they were dungarees, overalls. And so we had this, the problem isn't thinking and doing. The problem is assigning thinking to one caste and doing to a different caste. And then, because now what happens? These people have to get these people to do something that these people decided these people needed to do. But now it doesn't work because humans aren't actually particularly good at working like that. Machines are okay, but not humans. So what we want to do now, it doesn't let these people be human, and it doesn't let them be their best selves. So we want to let these people, we want to let the doers, which when I say these people now, I mean all the, or we have to let the people doing the work have as much decision-making authority about the work as possible. So now, instead of having thinkers and doers, what we do now have is everybody over time is involved in doing production. I'm on the manufacturing, I'm doing a keynote, I'm delivering, I'm flying an airplane and operating on a patient. So I'm a doer, and then I will wrap thinking around it. I will make decisions in front, and I will reflect upon how well we do, and then we will judge ourselves. And this is one of the key differences. In the old day, I didn't need you to be emotionally healthy because I was going to stand behind you with the clipboard and judge you. But now, if I say, oh, scratch that, we're going to let you be a decider. That means you have to have voice in improving the process, which, oh, by the way, you made decisions about. So now we're asking people to judge themselves. I'm not going to judge you. I'll make observations, but it's not my place to judge you. But you can make an assessment. In order to do that, people need to have healthy emotions, and we have to connect as human beings. Because without that, I won't feel safe enough to tame my sense of, oh, I got to defend how good I was. I'm going to wear that protective shell. I need to feel safe to release that shell and then invite, oh yeah, how can we do, if we did it again, how can we make it better? Yeah, sure, I was the person who designed what we're doing now, but I can now say it can be better. But that requires us to be healthy, not just physically, but up here.
Well, that's right. And also, I love that idea, but it also requires us to share what we believe is better, because not everybody may have the same version of what better means. This is one of I find in my work is that, if we take this out into the corporate America, where there are all male boards who are not letting women in, and I'm not saying that, I'm making a kind of a statement about that, but just on the numbers, the evidence is that men and women working together, when it works, is a very good idea in the corporate world, but it's not happening easily because there appears to be some stuck views on, well, men do this better at the top level.
Well,
and there's a passion for women to break it, and I don't want it to be a fight. I want it to be, I would like it to be, as you discovered, with an all-male environment. You shifted through your sense of language, you shifted how they related to each other and the job at hand, didn't you?
yeah, and I don't label it as male and female. It's just a better way to go. I can tell you, here's the problem. Even, it doesn't matter whether you have all men or all men, women, white, dark, whatever. If you don't run the meeting and you, in a way, if you don't have a conversation in a way which cherishes a different opinion, a diverse opinion,
Yes.
it
Yes.
doesn't matter. I felt, even though if you took a picture of me in a meeting, you say, well, that's not very diverse. I will tell you, I often felt like a diverse thinker. I'm a left-handed kid. I was born in Berkeley, California. I'm very much of an introvert and sort of in my own headspace. And in the Navy environment with all those other naval officers, I often felt like, I see it different. Like, I don't know what these guys are talking about.
Yeah.
I see it differently, but it doesn't really matter that. So you can look like someone else and think differently. You can not look like someone else and think the same. But the bottom line is, if we don't cherish that, the whole value is to get diverse cognitive thinking.
Yes.
That makes the whole team stronger. But what I see is organizations now working hard to hire a bunch of people with diverse backgrounds, but then we pound them into thinking the same way because we don't run the meeting in a way that cherishes other opinions.
I agree, and that's a very, 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 very good point. And it's diversity and inclusion, I think, is a kind of a strange partnership, because if we force them all to think the same way, we lose the diversity, and that's the value of differences, which is what you're saying. And I totally agree. So the goal is that I like the idea of leaning back in order to help people to lean forward when you're a leader. Because there's also a theory that's been promoted to women with a book called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg about
Sure.
Women need to lean in because they haven't been in the corporate world. But I think it's leaning in to listen, where I hear you're saying as a leader, you leaned back in order to get the men to talk. Is that right?
Well, it depends what you're leaning into. Sorry, my cat's here. She wants to say hi.
Oh, I'm a cat person. That's wonderful.
You got to turn off the computer. Leaning. If you're going to say I'm going to lean into here's the language in corporations. Okay,
Yeah.
Male, female, U.S., overseas. I hear it everywhere. The group of people below me, I often refer to as my direct reports. Why? Because I direct and they report back. And this language is so inculcated, we don't even realize how screwed up it is. So the problem is everybody is managing downward. We're focusing our energy on making sure these people do the right thing. What I want to do is everyone focus upward, managing what we need to do to support the organization. And the way you do that is you can lean into your boss. I am okay with that.
Yes.
Lean into your job, lean into your mission, lean into your boss, lean into your skills, lean into whatever that, but don't lean into the people who work for you. Let them lean into you. You got to lean back and create space for them, because the hierarchical power gradient is already pushing that way. There's already a natural gravity to cause you to lean down. You got to actively fight that. Yeah. So
yeah, and I like that. That's very good advice to women who are listening, because I've come across a lot of experiences where women will say to me, well, I made it into this meeting, but it was majority men and they just weren't listening.
Yeah.
but they need to, and I help them understand that they need to lean in and also listen to the language. So it's very interesting. We're talking about language is shift. It's like if I wasn't speaking Russian and I didn't understand Russian, I would have to gather different signals in order to understand somebody. And it's the same with not just men and women, but different diverse groups have different nuances of language. And it's about listening, but providing that space. And that's what I like about what you're saying. What do you think is happening for men generally then in the corporate world, given some of the pressures that seem to be there to embrace women in the workplace, and obviously the Me Too movement seems to have had an impact on men, which is to step back. That's what my experience has been in talking to men. Do you think that is happening?
Again, I don't label it as a man thing. I think there's a lot of bad behavior. There are some also great leaders who are men, but there's a lot of bad behavior, and there's a lot of
yes,
unnecessary pain that's inflicted on people. Our target audience isn't the person who's evil.
No.
So if or even the person who says, well, I don't really believe that. I think, we really just some people just need to be told what to do, and I'm here to tell them. Like, okay, fine. Don't buy my book. Don't watch my videos. Yes. Don't hire me. Don't ever talk to me again. I don't care. I'm not trying to convince you to change that way. Our target is humans, men or women,
yes,
who say, I want to be more effective as a leader. What do you mean by that? I want to create an environment where the people that I'm in charge of can feel like they can be their best human selves when they are around me, when they are in my company, when they come to work for me, that they can be fully human. They don't need to wear masks. They don't need to pretend they know something when they don't. And they don't need to worry about being ridiculed or judged if they have an idea that ends up not panning out, especially if the idea is something like, hey, I think we might be shooting the wrong ship. So for us on the submarine, it's very important to let someone who thinks that, you only need to be 1% sure. You don't need to be convinced that we might be killing the wrong people. I need you to speak up. I need to create an environment where that person who just had the smallest nagging doubt said, yeah, I'm not 100% sure. This could be the enemy, but it could be another ship that sounds like the enemy. The enemy could be masking and hiding behind this other over here. Oh, we really need to hear that. And so basically every war movie you see is totally horrible in terms of creating that environment, because you see sort of this macho, rah, 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 this is how it is, there's certainty, there's no room for ambiguity. It's like, you know what? Our plan is based on the following assumption that the enemy is over that hill, but I just want everyone to know the enemy might not be over that hill. They might be over this hill. So I want everyone to be on the lookout for any indications that this fundamental assumption is flawed, and I want to know as soon as possible. But this isn't the conversation we typically have.
Yeah, and I so agree, David. It's wonderful to hear that view. And I feel the same in my organization. We're looking for what I was called the wise men and women who actually want to shift their organization forward.
Yeah.
Because of all sorts of other, market changes, people changes, whatever. As opposed to the one who, I read an article the other day, which was 10 ways you suck as a leader. And it was all about the fact that you weren't listening, and your employees probably wouldn't tell you what kind of control freak you are.
Right.
So I love this idea, and it is about human beings first, and the diversity that we bring together as different types of men and women, different types of generations, different sexual orientations, all of this. And it's all about the conversation and the language. So as we head towards the end of this wonderful, magical conversation, what one key piece of advice would you give to men and women listening to start just coming together, because that's my passion, is have those conversations, even though every person contributing in the circle might be coming up with a different idea. That's okay.
Oh my gosh, it's so many things. So first of all, it's always you. The problem's always you. Your control space is always you. Focus on controlling your own behavior. Focus on controlling your own words. Don't worry about trying to control other people's words. You can influence their response by your words. So for example, if I say, will it work? I'm going to get a yeah. But if I say, how likely is it to work? What's the percent probability it'll work? What's your sense of confidence in this thing working? I'm going to get a more nuanced response from the person. So don't say, will it work? And then order people to give you a nuanced response. Ask to control yourself so that you ask the question in a way that invites a nuanced response. It's always you. You can only control yourself. And what I see a lot of behavior is people are too lazy to control themselves because that's hard work. So I'm just going to push it. It's easier for me to just blab my mouth and say, well, no, you should do this and you ought to be doing that and you could do that. When really it's just on you. So it's always, every time I've been in a situation that was screwed up, it was always me.
Okay.
It was always me. Now, but the other thing is, let's think about diversity. It's so obvious when you imagine a world, let's say everyone were exactly the same. The race would be extinct in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Because if everyone was exactly the same, we had the same amount of risk appetite, we saw things the same way, then no one would go over the next valley and see what's over there until all of a sudden it was safe, and then we would all go into the next valley. What we need are some people to say, oh, I think it's safe, and they go.
Yes.
And it's an amazing valley and we learn stuff, or it's inhabited by lions, they all get eaten. But now not all of us got eaten. A few people got eaten. So it was, sad for them, but it's good for the organization, the species, the race, the company. Yes. Some people should try it. If you want to try it, great, but it's not like I'm going to order, hey, you 3 volunteers, you go over to the next valley and see what happens. Because it may be, there may be twice as many fruit and nut trees over there. Hey, you guys, and they come back a month later and say, hey, you guys got to come over here. Now it's thankful that we went over there. But if we don't have some people that are a little more risk embracing and some people that are less risk embracing, some people who see, some people are going to be really good at smelling. They say, oh, I can smell the lions. I don't smell them. I do. So without variations,
yes,
we would be extinct in 10 seconds because we'd all be exactly the same. And we'd have one chance to make a mistake and we'd be out of business. The problem is in business, we sometimes, we misunderstand that because you can go through bankruptcy and rise again.
Yes. But
in general, for the long-term survival of the species and the long-term survival of your company, diversity is last story. I was down in Chile, and I was visiting a vineyard, and it's an organic vineyard. They don't use fertilizers on their vines, and so they use native, and they have native insects and plants. So they need an environment, and I'm speaking with the owner, and he's talking about sort of between the vines, they have acres of vines, but between them, they have sort of these strips of, it looks like just wildlife, they have trees and bushes and plants. I said, what's all this? This could be used for vines. He said, no. Without this diversity, without these different kinds of plants, we wouldn't have different kinds of insects. And every once in a while, every 10 years, all the XYZ, they die off. And if we only had one kind of insect, and that was the kind that was pollinating our vines, we'd lose everything. But it's only because we have all these diverse plantings And it may seem a little less efficient on a year-by-year basis, but if you measure over 100 years, you have to, and our plan is we have this long-term perspective. Then you got to have all these diverse species.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful story, because I think nature does it so easily and naturally, and when we allow nature to be natural, it's one of the things I always discuss with my clients is, what is your natural gift? You know, be yourself, and that's exactly what you're saying, David. And I think we're definitely on the same path of discovery in our lives, which is fantastic. So I love your advice that when the problem, it's always about me, it's always about yourself. Take heed of that, and lean back when you want people to come forward, and lean in when you want to be heard. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation, this magical conversation with you, and I hope that we will find all these wise people out there who want to make a change in the world, and that's what I seek, is to bring about world harmony, which is quite a big issue. Thank you, David.
So much fun. Thanks for the amazing work that you do, Pauline.
Thank you.